The station was always quiet after 11 p.m. Not empty, just quiet, in a way that made every sound feel important. The soft buzz of the lights, the distant wind moving through the tracks, the low electronic voice announcing trains that almost nobody waited for anymore. Ethan came here every night after work. Platform 4, 11:35 p.m. The last train home. For 3 years, nothing changed. He worked at a small printing shop near the river, finished late, bought the same canned coffee from the same vending machine, and stood near the same yellow safety line while waiting for the train. It was not a good life, but it was a life he understood. The station workers knew him, not by name, but in the quiet way people recognize someone they see too often. The old woman cleaning the stairs always nodded at him. The man inside the ticket booth sometimes looked up from his newspaper and gave a tired smile. And every night, at exactly 11:43 p.m., the train arrived. The doors opened. A few people got off. A few people got on. Then the train disappeared into the dark. Simple, predictable, safe. That was why Ethan liked it. Outside the station, the city still moved with noise and light and unfinished conversations. But here, time slowed down. The station felt separated from the rest of the world, like a place floating quietly between yesterday and tomorrow. That Thursday night began the same way. Rain fell lightly onto the tracks, not enough to soak the ground, just enough to leave reflections on the platform floor. Ethan stood beside the vending machine, warming his hands around a hot can of coffee. 11:41 p.m. 2 minutes left. Across the tracks, a girl wearing a long gray coat sat alone on a bench. He had never seen her before. She looked young, maybe 22, 23. Her dark hair moved slightly in the cold wind. She was not using her phone. She was not writing. She was simply watching the tracks, waiting. For some reason, Ethan noticed that, more than anything else, people never looked at the tracks anymore. They looked at screens, at clocks, at advertisements, but not at the tracks themselves. The girl did, almost as if she was listening for something. 11:42 p.m. The electronic voice echoed through the station. The final train arriving on Platform 4 will arrive shortly. Ethan took a sip of coffee. The familiar vibration beneath the ground arrived a few seconds later. The train was coming, right on time. Headlights appeared in the darkness beyond the tunnel. White light cut through the rain. Closer, closer. Then something strange happened. The train did not slow down. At first, Ethan thought he imagined it, but the sound grew louder, faster. The lights rushed toward the platform too quickly. The train passed through the station without stopping. A violent rush of wind swept across the platform. Ethan stepped backward in shock. The silver car screamed past under the station lights. Window after window flashed by in a blur. But for 1 second, just one, he saw the passengers inside. Every seat was occupied, and every passenger was staring out the window, not talking, not moving, just watching the platform in complete silence, watching him. Then the train disappeared into the darkness beyond the station. Gone. The station became quiet again. Too quiet. Ethan stared at the empty tracks. His coffee can slipped slightly in his hand. Behind him, someone laughed nervously. Another passenger muttered, "What the hell was that?" The electronic announcement system remained silent. No apology and no explanation. Nothing. Ethan slowly looked across the tracks. The girl in the gray coat was still sitting on the bench, still calm, still watching the tunnel, as if nothing unusual had happened at all. Then, for the first time, she looked directly at Ethan and quietly asked, "That train usually stops here, doesn't it?" Ethan did not answer immediately. The question itself felt strange, not because of the words, but because of the way she asked it. Calm, almost careful, as if the answer mattered more than it should. Rain tapped softly against the metal roof above them. Somewhere farther down the platform, a man complained loudly to a station employee. Another passenger checked his phone again and again, searching for updates that did not exist. But the girl in the gray coat remained completely still, waiting for Ethan's answer. Finally, he nodded. "Every night," he said quietly. 11:43. The girl looked back, toward the dark tunnel. Her expression did not change, but Ethan noticed something strange. She did not seem surprised, only disappointed. A cold wind moved through the station. The overhead lights flickered once, then stabilized again. Ethan glanced at the electronic schedule board. No delays, no cancellation notice, no record of the train passing through at all. Platform 4, 11:43 p.m. on time. As if nothing unusual had happened. The station employee near the stairs looked confused, too. He spoke quickly into a radio, then shook his head in frustration. Passengers slowly began leaving the platform. Some called taxis, others checked bus routes. The station started returning to normal, but Ethan stayed, and so did the girl. He wasn't sure why. Maybe because leaving felt wrong. Maybe because he wanted someone else to admit they had seen the same thing. The girl finally stood up from the bench. She was taller than he expected. The gray coat hung loosely around her shoulders, moving slightly in the wind. Without looking at him, she asked, "Do you come here every night?" "Pretty much." "For how long?" 3 years. That seemed to interest her. She looked at the tracks again. "Then you would notice things other people don't." Ethan frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" The girl hesitated. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Then she quietly said, "Sometimes trains carry people who aren't ready to leave yet." A distant announcement interrupted the silence before Ethan could respond. A replacement train would arrive in 20 minutes. Passengers near the stairs sighed in relief. Normal life was trying to repair itself, but the atmosphere on the platform had already changed. Ethan suddenly became aware of how cold the station felt. Not physically cold, empty cold, the kind that settles into a place after something leaves. The girl started walking toward the exit stairs. Ethan watched her go. He should have let her leave. He knew that. Instead, he called out, "Wait." She stopped. "What did you mean?" he asked. "About the people on the train?" For a moment, she said nothing. Then she turned slightly toward him. The station lights reflected softly in her dark eyes. "You saw them too," she said. It was not a question. Ethan felt his throat tighten. Because yes, he had seen them. Only for a second, but clearly enough to remember. Every passenger sitting silently, every face turned toward the platform, watching, not one person speaking, not one person moving. And somehow, every single one of them looked sad. The girl lowered her eyes briefly. "Most people forget by morning," she said softly. "That's probably better." Then she walked up the stairs and disappeared from sight. Ethan stood alone on the platform again. The replacement train arrived 23 minutes later. Different driver, different lights, different sound. Everything normal. The doors opened. Passengers entered quietly. Ethan stepped inside. The train smelled faintly of rain and wet fabric. Almost every seat was empty. He sat beside the window and watched the station slowly disappear behind him. For several minutes, he could not stop thinking about the girl's words. Most people forget. By morning, the train moved through sleeping parts of the city. Dark apartment windows, silent intersections, convenience stores glowing alone in the night. Ethan leaned his head against the cold glass. Exhaustion slowly settled into his body. Then, as the train entered a tunnel, something reflected faintly in the window beside him. Someone sitting directly behind him. Ethan turned immediately. The seat was empty. He looked back at the dark window. Only his own reflection stared back now. Tired eyes, gray jacket, rainwater still on his sleeves. Nothing else. He exhaled quietly and closed his eyes for a moment. The train continued forward into the darkness, but somewhere deep in his mind, one thought refused to disappear. The passengers on the train that never stopped. Where were they going? Ethan slept badly that night. Not because he was frightened. At least, that was what he told himself. The truth was harder to explain. Something about the train felt unfinished, like hearing a sentence without its ending. He woke up several times before morning. Each time, he checked the clock beside his bed. 3:12 a.m., 4:03 a.m., 4:47 a.m. And every time he closed his eyes again, he saw the same image. Rows of silent passengers looking out through dark train windows, watching the platform, watching him. By Friday afternoon, the memory already felt less real. The printing shop was busy that day. Machines rattled endlessly. Customers complained about deadlines. His manager asked him to stay late again. Normal things, loud things, the kind of things that push strange thoughts away. Around 8 p.m., Ethan finally convinced himself the whole event had been some kind of accident. An express train, maybe. A scheduling error. People often looked strange through moving windows at night. There was always an explanation. There had to be, still. When his shift ended near 11 p.m., he noticed himself walking slightly faster than usual. Toward the station. Toward Platform 4. The rain had stopped, but the city streets still reflected light from signs and passing cars. The station entrance glowed softly in the darkness. Warm, familiar, safe. Ethan bought his usual canned coffee from the vending machine. The machine made its usual clicking sound. He almost smiled with relief. Routine mattered tonight. Platform 4 looked normal. A tired office worker slept against a pillar. Two students argued quietly over headphones. A woman carrying grocery bags checked the time every few seconds. No gray coat. No strange atmosphere. No silence pressing against the walls. Ethan checked the clock. 11:39 p.m. 4 minutes left. He told himself he was disappointed because he wanted answers. But deep down, another feeling bothered him more. He had expected the girl to be there. The realization unsettled him. At 11:41 p.m., the electronic announcement played, exactly the same as yesterday. The final train arriving on Platform 4 will arrive shortly. A cold feeling moved slowly through Ethan's chest. He looked down the tunnel. Darkness. Then, far away, headlights appeared. The train was coming. This time, it slowed normally. Metal wheels screeched softly against the tracks. The familiar rhythm returned. Passengers relaxed around him. Everything was normal again. Ethan almost laughed at himself. The train stopped. The doors opened. People stepped out. Others stepped in. Completely ordinary. But just before Ethan entered the nearest door, he noticed something strange. One of the passengers inside was staring directly at him. An older man sitting alone near the back of the car. Gray suit, thin face, motionless. The man did not blink. Ethan hesitated. Someone behind him muttered impatiently, "You getting on or not?" Ethan stepped inside quickly. The doors closed. The train began moving again. He tried not to look at the old man. Instead, he sat near the opposite side of the car and stared at the route map above the windows. 3 stops to home. Simple. Normal. But after several minutes, curiosity pulled his eyes back across the train. The old man was still watching him. Not aggressively, not angrily, just watching. Ethan looked around carefully. Nobody else seemed to notice. A teenage boy played games on his phone. A woman in a business suit slept quietly beside the door. 2 students whispered to each other near the far end of the car. Life continued normally around him. Only the old man felt separate from it. Then the train lights flickered. Once, twice. For half a second, the inside of the car darkened completely. And in that instant, the old man was no longer sitting alone. Every seat around him was occupied. Silent passengers filled the entire section of the train, all facing forward, perfectly still. The lights returned immediately. The seats were empty again. Only the old man remained. Ethan's heart pounded violently now. The old man slowly stood up. The train announced the next station. Riverside Station. Not Ethan's stop. Still, the old man walked toward the opening doors. Before leaving the train, he finally spoke. Quietly, almost gently. "You saw it because it noticed you." Then he stepped onto the platform. The doors closed between them. And for the first time in 3 years of taking the same train home every night, Ethan felt afraid to look out the window.